It's catching up, no time to waste. Oh, let's join our hearts. The future depends on us. There's no more time to wait. We should protect our land. Oh, come take our hands. We'll show you a wonderland. Cradle of culture and arts, Hindu Kush Himalaya. The home to millions of people of many nations and tribes. The vibrant pulse of the planet, the source of endless life. Oh, come take our hands, we'll show you a wonderland. Cradle of culture and arts, Hindu Kush Himalaya.
Good morning and welcome to Hindu Kush Himalaya Day at the Cryosphere Pavilion. My name is Pam Pearson. I'm the director of the International Cryosphere Climate Initiative. And on behalf of everyone, we would like to welcome especially the honored ministers and others to this day devoted to mountain regions. And again, especially the Hindu Kush Himalaya. These cryosphere, these snow and ice regions serve directly 1 billion people. Downstream, the loss of glaciers and snow will impact 3 billion people. This is why they're so important. This is one of the reasons why a number of countries are trying to get cryosphere, and in particular mountain regions, mentioned as part of the ultimate decision point of this COP26 meeting, because this is an important impact of climate change. And as many of you here know, at 1.5 degrees, we're able to preserve a great deal of this ice and snow and water resources, but there is a huge difference between 1.5 and 2 degrees when it comes to glaciers and snow. And many, many people will be impacted if we allow temperatures to rise, especially above 2 degrees. And glaciers disappear rather quickly. To grow them back, it can take centuries or millennia. Their loss is essentially permanent on human timescales. So this is an incredibly important day for the Cryosphere Pavilion. And without further delay, I would like to turn it over for the moderator of this event. Please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pam, for setting the context for us. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you so much, honorable delegates and ministers, please. As we all know, the event is focused on the Mountains of Opportunity, a framework to scale up investment in mountain-specific climate priorities for our Hindu Kush Himalaya region. I hope I'm clear enough because I still want to wear my mask. So thank you. Just to give a little bit of background, in a consultative meeting held on 15 July this year, delegates from all our 8 member countries, including UNFCCC National Focal Points and HKH High-Level Task Force members, along with the representatives from COP26 presidency, met to articulate a collective mountain voice for more ambitious climate action in the HKH at the COP26. To accelerate climate action, ICIMOD has developed the Mountains of Opportunity, an investment framework to help our member countries mobilize resources for mountain-specific climate priorities. The event will introduce the framework which will support creation of Friends of the HKH Group consisting of governments, private sector, financial institution, and development partners to raise awareness around the climate crisis in the region. Now, in not to take so much of time, I would like to invite our Director General, Dr. Pema Gemacho, ICIMOD, to give the welcome remarks. Dr. Pema, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of ICIMOD, the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, I would like to welcome all of you to this Cryosphere Pavilion for the HKH event. I have the honor to welcome the honorable ministers, the honorable secretaries from our regional member countries, as well as distinguished guests from far and above. We are very pleased to have among us His Excellency Mohammad Shahab Uddin, Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change of Bangladesh, Lembo Yishi Penjo, the Honorable Minister for Agriculture and Forest of Bhutan. We will also be having His Excellency Honorable Malik Amin Aslam, Minister of Environment, Minister of Climate Change of Pakistan shortly. We are also very happy that the Honorable Secretary, Mr. Rameshwar Gupta from the Government of India is also here. And we are also very pleased that China would be coming, the delegate from China would be joining us soon. Today, I understand that we will be joined shortly by His Excellency Ken Offler, the COP26 Regional Ambassador for Asia and South Pacific, and His Excellency Jonathan Pershing, Deputy Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, United States of America, is already here. Welcome, sir. Let me also welcome our board members and our ICIMOD support group joining us from Kathmandu and from places around the world. Among others, we also have their excellencies, the ambassadors from the UK, the USA, the EU, and Australia joining us, the embassies from the embassies in Kathmandu virtually. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this is a session about the roof of the world, the water towers of Asia, the third pole. It is about listening to the collective voice of the 240 million people living in the Hindu Kush Himalayan mountains that is spread across from Afghanistan through to Myanmar, including Pakistan, China, India, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Bhutan. So we are talking about the huge area of the highest mountain region in the world. We are here gathered to we are here together to amplify the message of our region, its importance as a global asset, its role as a barometer for planet health, the crisis it is facing from climate change, and the need for regional and international cooperation for financial investment and technology transfer. We are here to ensure that the world hears about the crisis that the region is already facing now and acknowledge that if urgent actions are not taken, it may be too little, too late. We have heard time and again that a 1.5-degree world is going to be too hot for our region. We have heard that just now from Pam. We have seen with our own eyes that our snow cover is disappearing. Our mountains are becoming more and more bare. Our glaciers are melting, and our ice packs are decreasing. Our glacier lakes are expanding in size and in numbers, and our people are experiencing more floods and landslides. Our weather patterns are not just changing, but have already changed, and our farmers are struggling with the impact of too much or too little water. We are losing hundreds, if not thousands, of lives and suffering damages to infrastructure and properties worth billions of dollars. These are what we are experiencing now and happening already, and not in some 50 years down the line. I don't think there is time to wait that long, even for our young and our next generations. We recognize and appreciate the enormous amount of work that is already being done by our regional member countries to mitigate and adapt to climate change. From massive scales of tree plantations to restoration of grassland ecosystems to ambitious transition to clean and renewable energy and expansive infrastructure to protect communities from disasters, our countries have put in place policies and plans and implementing them at huge cost. However, the causes and impacts of climate change are transboundary in nature and requires a regional approach. While actions are taken at local and national levels, the dividends from investments and benefits will be much higher if issues like air pollution control, disaster risk reduction, and biodiversity conservation are addressed regionally as they transcend beyond national boundaries. We need regional cooperation more than ever in sharing information, in conducting research, and generating evidence, and in cross learning and cross transfer of good practices. That is why this dialogue is important. The presence of our leaders from the region is a testimony to the commitment that our regional member countries are demonstrating that they mean business and that business as usual is not going to be enough. At the end of the day, it is leadership at national levels that matters. In walking the talk, we are very happy that the Honorable Prime Minister of Nepal, the Right Honorable Sherpa Doba, is giving us a pre-recorded message that would both be inspiring and encouraging for all of us. As our host country, we are very happy that His Excellency has taken time to send this inspiring message. We know that in spite of our best effort, we will not be able to take all the actions needed on our own. We need increased investment from both public and private sectors. We need financial and technical support from our development partners outside the region for mitigation, for adapting to climate change, and for building resilience of our communities. It is in this context that we put forward this dialogue today on an investment framework to support our region, which we call Mountains of Opportunity. The HKH region is not all about gloom and doom. It offers hope and opportunities too. Opportunities to reduce climate impacts, to adapt to changing climate, to respond to shocks and disasters, opportunities to save lives and properties, opportunities to build green, resilient, and inclusive livelihoods. But we must seize these opportunities now. Therefore, we are seeking the advice and guidance of our leaders from the region to shape this investment framework and help take it forward with appropriate policies. We are calling on our development partners to come forward with much needed financial investments and technological support to help our regional member countries to implement their climate actions. We are calling on our private sector to invest in green and resilient businesses and create jobs that are not based on exploiting nature but in restoring nature and ecosystems. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude, I would like to thank FCDO, the British Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, for supporting us on this campaign from HKH to Glasgow. Our leaders gathered here today, together with the COP26 presidency, the US Deputy Special Climate Envoy, and other leaders, have this unique moment in time to decide the fate of the HKH mountains and the future of one in every 4 persons on this planet. The call for race to resilience and leaving no one behind must resonate with the nearly 2 billion people living within the hills and valleys of the Hindu Kush Himalayan mountains. Let us together create history, a success story not about scaling the heights of the mountain peaks, but about saving the mountains. Thank you very much and welcome you all once again.
Thank you, Dr. Pema. Now, so due to the paucity of time, we would like to start with the video message from the Right Honorable Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Dubey from Nepal. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Hindu Kush Himalaya region is highly vulnerable to the impact of climate change. The frequency of extreme events is increasing. Mountain communities are expected to suffer the consequences of far away activities for which they are not responsible. Improving their lives is getting more costly. It is important for the countries of the Hindu Kush Himalayas to collectively address the climate change and its impact. On behalf of Nepal, ICIMOD's host country, I endorse the Mountains of Opportunities framework proposed by ICIMOD and remind you of urgency for investment in mountains, specific climate priorities in the Hindu Kush Himalaya region. I request the international community, financial institutions, and the private sectors to increase investment in the Hindu Kush Himalaya region to support the initiative and ambitions of the regional member countries to reduce carbon emissions. Our policy must promote adoption of green technology and emphasize inclusive development to ensure that vulnerable communities are not left behind. Recent extreme climate events have shown that sharing data, information, and knowledge across the border can subsequently reduce the cost of climate-related disaster. I would like highlight the need to strengthen regional institutions like ICIMOD that focus on regional and cross-border sharing and solutions. I wish you all the best and hope that Hindu Kush Himalaya communities will benefit from the deliberation here today. Thank you.
We would really like to thank Honorable Prime Minister for sending us the video message. Now, moving on to our next session, we will have a very short introduction on the Mountains of Opportunity Investment Framework by Ms. Nanki Kaur. She's the expert in the adaptation and resilience building at ICIMOD. Nanki, over to you.
Thank you, Dipsika. Excellencies and colleagues, hello and good morning from COP26 at Glasgow, a landmark event for all of us. And I have the privilege to introduce the Mountains of Opportunity investment framework on behalf of our 8 regional member countries. This framework has been developed as part of the HKH to Glasgow campaign, a campaign that we've been running since December 2019 with our regional member countries. That includes governments, experts, and communities. The campaign has aims to promote mountain voices at COP26, which is a critical COP. As we all know, it's going to be a landmark COP. What we decide here at this COP will have implications for our region for the next decade. The second ambition of this campaign has really been to help scale up investment in mountain-specific climate priorities. And that again is critical, not just because of the need for investment, but all our member countries are also entering into a COVID recovery phase. And there is a large scale of resources that's being allocated to recovery. Now is the time to ensure that recovery packages are also aligned to climate action. So this campaign has been built on, if you can go to the next slide, it's just from here. All right. So this campaign has been built on robust evidence and political commitment from our region. So just to highlight where it's coming from, in 2015, we carried out almost like a mini IPCC exercise to really highlight and fill the evidence gaps for our region. And based on this was some of the evidence that really highlights that 1.5 degrees is too hot for the Hindu Kush Himalaya region. And this evidence has now been reiterated by the latest IPCC report, where for the first time we have a special box that focuses on our region and does highlight that warming is happening fast and it could lead to irreversible change. Based on that assessment in 2019, we put together an HKH call to action with our member countries, which basically focused on supporting sustainable development for the mountain region. And within, as part of that, a big focus on climate action as well. This was then followed in 2020 by, I understand, a landmark decision of the first time ever a political commitment amongst all 8 countries to really support sustainable development in the mountain region. And building on that political commitment over the last year, we've been working with our partners to come here at COP26 with a collective voice, which aims to promote 3 messages. The first is to highlight that our region is the pulse of the planet, and as Pema highlighted, it supports 2 billion people directly or indirectly. But it's also a region that is at the front line of the climate crisis. The second message that we've come here with is the Mountains of Opportunity, an investment framework that I'll talk a bit more about. And the last one, obviously, the power of 8, as we see our 8 countries out here as well, and how cooperation between these 8 countries can actually leverage ambitious climate action for our region. So the pulse of the planet is something that Pema, I think, illustrated very well. A region that spreads across 8 countries. It has the largest ice reserves outside the polar regions, 4 of the 10 global biodiversity hotspots, and is home to 10 of our major river systems. As such, this region does support the livelihoods of 240 million people living in the mountains, but also an additional 1.65 billion living downstream. And if you think of the food from this region, that supports about 3 billion people. So that's a very significant chunk of our global population. But unfortunately, we are also at the front line of the climate crisis, and you can see some lovely pillars out here, but the basic message is 1.5 degrees is too hot, and we start losing majority of our glacial volumes, and our region is already experiencing more extreme weather events and the impacts of those. So ambitious climate action for us is essential. Coming from that, what we've really focused on is, if we are to deliver ambitious climate action, we really need to scale up investment to deliver that. So what we've been working on is this Mountains of Opportunity investment framework. It's been designed as a medium-term investment framework which will help us to identify, to align, and then to scale up investment in mountain-specific climate priorities. So why we are calling this mountains of opportunities is because firstly, it builds on opportunities that are provided by the Hindu Kush Himalaya region. Our region is rich in natural assets. Our region has a rich cultural diversity, and that lends itself to delivering, to supporting resilience and a transition to a carbon neutral world. The second opportunity is the opportunity of now aligning COVID recovery measures with climate action. And we have done an analysis of what our countries are prioritizing in their climate action plans, but also what they're putting forward in their COVID recovery plans. And these 6 areas is where that convergence emerges. All our countries have focused on nature-based solutions like forestation, resilient mountain infrastructure for our region that focuses a lot on renewable energy, for example. All our countries focus on strengthening more resilient enterprises. For our region, that's the MSME sectors, in the tourism sector. This makes up almost 95% of the private sector. So anytime we talk about the private sector should scale up investment, that's the sector that's going to play a big role. So there's a big focus on innovation in this sector, green businesses. The fifth one is on a more inclusive and climate responsive financial landscape. I think our countries are, I would say, leaders when it comes to some of the more climate smart finance that's happening, whether that's climate budgets or more green bonds. But for example, our banks, our development banks are interested to now also understand what do resilient bonds look like, or what do principles for resilient investment look like, and how to develop that regionally. We've also got to focus on shock responsive social protection systems, something that as we come out of COVID, I think we're all familiar about. It's played a huge role, but also can help address climate shocks as well. And the last one around resilient and inclusive labor markets is really about the green skills that are required to deliver this transition. So this is where there is an alignment between COVID and climate priorities. And the third opportunity is that this framework hopes to provide a more holistic and time-bound investment. By holistic, we mean it hopes to align policy instruments, financial instruments, and all our efforts around capacity building, and bring that all together behind something focused and targeted. And my last slide is the message, the third message that we bring here is that all of this is only possible through the power of 8. And that is our 8 countries. It's a lucky symbol for our region. If you look at it in this way, it's also looks at infinity. But this is the power of our 8 countries coming together to generate evidence, to share that evidence, to support climate action, to start to put in place regional learning so that we can learn fast to support this transition, to work with each other to support technology transfer between our region. We've just been joined by our DG from China, and that's a country that a lot of us do look for in terms of technological innovation and transfer. And then that also some of the new work that our countries are moving into is how do we develop more regional and more resilient supply chains across the region, especially for mountain goods and services. And finally, how do we come together in terms of more regional investment mechanisms, whether those are markets or financial facilities. So it's about coming together to leverage additional action, both regionally but also internationally, to deliver climate action for our region. I'll stop with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nanki, on putting forward the 3 key messages, which we have been working along with all our member countries. Now, moving on to the next session, where we have invited our head of the delegation and representative from all our member countries. First of all, I would like to invite His Excellency Mohammad Shahabuddin, who is the Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change from Bangladesh, and he's also the head of the delegation at COP26. So please, for your special remarks.
Good morning, Honorable Minister of Nepal, Bhutan, China, India, and Pakistan, Director General, ICIMOD, climate leaders, distinguished delegates. It is my great pleasure to join you all in this beautiful city, Glasgow, and attend this HKH high level event on Mountains of Opportunity organized by the ICIMOD. Distinguished delegates, the Hindu Kush Himalayas is the pulse of the planet. The region provides livelihoods for 240 million people in the uh, mountains, another 1.65 billion who live downstream. Distinguished guests, there is an urgent need to address the accelerating climate crisis in the HKH. Climate and COVID recovery measures will help unlock these opportunities. Specific examples that will strengthen adaptation, mitigation, and help deliver scaled up finance. Bangladesh has already been submitted our revised NDC and in process of preparation of NAP. Bangladesh spends nearly US $3 billion per year for adaptation measures. 11.5 million saplings nationwide, marking the birth centenary of our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and also launched a program called Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan to mobilize resources for a secure, sustainable future. For scaling up climate finance, we have dedicated funds for climate finance titled Bangladesh Climate Change Trust Fund and has also been investing around US 460 million since 2010. Distinguished delegates, we need to support ICI modes campaigns to amplify a collective mountain voice and scaled up investment in mountain specific climate priorities which shall enable HKH countries to address transboundary climate risk and transition into green resilience and inclusive mountain society. We also echo the three messages. The first is to recognize and protect the Hindu Kush Himalaya as the pulse of the planet. The second is to scale up investment in mountain specific climate priorities through the Mountains of Opportunity Investment Framework and Finally, I thank ICIMOD to have organized this event to scale up the investment in mountain priorities. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, His Excellency. Now I would like to invite His Excellency Lainoko Yeshepenjor, who is also the Ministry of Agriculture and Forest from Bhutan, for give his special remarks.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Royal Government of Bhutan, I have the pleasure of conveying to the greetings of His Majesty the King Jigme Namgyalwangshu. It gives me great pleasure to be here at the Hindu Kush Himalaya High Level Event, Mountain of Opportunity. It is good to meet everyone in person after almost 2 years of engagement on virtual platform. Mountains indeed offer us ample opportunities. The Hindu Kush Himalayas that houses the vast sweep of peaks stretching over 2,400 kilometers, abutting 5 countries, not only determines the weather in the region, it also supports billions of people inhabiting downstream through meltwater and act as backbone of our agriculture. However, increased concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere leading to increased temperature is threatening our mountain, putting in danger the very survival of the people. Our glaciers are fast disappearing, posing significant risks and challenges. The assessment report from ICIMOD shows that even if the global temperature rise is limited to 1.5 degrees Celsius, 1/3 of our glaciers will disappear. The actual warning in our region will be much higher, leading to devastating impacts downstream, which is already being felt in this particular region. People in this region contribute least to greenhouse gas emissions, yet bear the maximum brunt of the adverse impacts of climate change. Our people lack resources and means to adapt to, and the fact that the entire Hindu Kush Himalaya sits on fragile mountainous ecosystems under us are extremely vulnerable. Under the visionary leadership of our monarchs, Bhutan has always strived to play its role in this global drive to address climate change. We have pledged to remain carbon neutral, and our constitution mandates that we maintain a minimum of 60% forest coverage for all times to come. All of this have been possible due to our successive monarchs' unwavering commitment towards ensuring environmental conservation and fighting climate change. Today, we are not only carbon neutral, we are carbon negative and have already realized the goal of the Paris Agreement, which the rest of the world intends to achieve by 2050 or beyond. Our main source of energy is renewable hydropower. Recently, Bhutan also submitted our second nationally determined contribution that reaffirms our commitment to remain carbon neutral and also presents enhanced targets, measures, and actions. Our second NDC is developed based on 4 sectoral low emission development strategies, namely LEDS for food security, human settlements, surface transport, and industries, and RED Plus strategies. Due to COVID-19 pandemic, submission of Bhutan's National Adaptation Plan and long-term strategy has been delayed, but works is in progress to submit the NAPS adaptation communication and long-term low GHG resilient development strategy with a focus on maintaining carbon neutrality commitment and building resilience. We aim to have both the NAP and LTS submitted by the end of this year. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, at the regional front,
Bhutan recognizes that there is a stronger need to have a better understanding of common challenges and opportunities in the region. HKH assessment report and the HKH call action facilitated by ICIMOD are a very good beginning to bring scientific evidence to have bearing on the policies and practice of HKH countries. Many of the issues like atmospheric pollution, floods and droughts, biodiversity conservation, and zoonotic diseases, water-induced disasters, conservation of bioculture heritage, trade and tourism cut across boundaries. There are opportunities for win-win solutions. Bhutan will work with our Hindu Kush Himalayan member countries to bring global attention for bigger support in terms of investment and technologies to help the mountainous region and its people towards a journey of resilience, prosperity, and healthy environment. The Hindu Kush Himalaya Ministerial Mountain Summit in October last year has been a key milestone in the journey for collective action in the region. We support ICIMOD's campaign to amplify a collective mountain voice and scaled up investment in mountain-specific climate priorities that will enable Hindu Kush Himalaya countries to address transboundary climate risks and transition into green, resilient, and inclusive mountain societies by 2030. Bhutan also echoes other HKH countries to amplify the three messages for the region. The first is to recognize and protect the Hindu Kush Himalaya as the pulse of the planet. The second is to scale up investment in mountain-specific climate priorities through the Mountains of Opportunity Investment Framework. And the third is to harness the power of 8 Hindu Kush Himalayan countries to leverage regional and international cooperation to deliver climate actions at scale and with depth and speed. The Hindu Kush Himalaya provides mountains of opportunity to build climate resilient and carbon neutral societies in the mountains and beyond. The region's natural assets can deliver nature-based solutions and opportunities for resilient enterprise and infrastructure to implement adaptation and mitigation targets. Its social and institutional assets can also create a green and resilient labor force in and beyond the region and provide shock-responsive social protection. Aligning COVID-19 economic recovery measures with these mountain niche investment opportunities can help leverage and scale up much needed international, regional, and national investments in green, resilient, and inclusive development. Specific examples that will strengthen adaptation and mitigation and help deliver scaled-up finance includes disaster risk reduction and management, including better forecasting and early warning systems, enhanced health surveillance systems, improved climate-resilient agriculture and livestock, agroforestry, or agro-silvopastoral systems. Further, we have emphasized priority actions in the water and renewable energy sector in order to improve and maintain supply infrastructure, improve efficiency in irrigation, and research on alternatives to solar energy. Bhutan, being carbon negative, strives to remain carbon neutral. This is not just an international commitment, but is supported by our constitution, meaning this is a legally binding commitment. Today, our forest sequesters more than 2/3 of our net national GHG emissions. Sectoral low-emission development efforts are being focused on enhancing e-mobility, enforcement of vehicle import and vehicular emission standards, promotion of non-motorized transport, enhancing energy saving in housings to reduce consumption of firewood and LPG in the domestic cooking and heating. Renewable energy development and usage will be our focus. Climate finance is key to leverage climate action and should be grant-based, easily accessible, predictable, sustainable, and scalable. We have been sitting in this contradicting context, a little or no recognition for efforts and sacrifices we make in protecting and promoting our environment. Financing must be complemented with the transfer of technologies, capacity building in green technologies, which are environmentally sustainable, disaster resilient, and contribute to green development. Lastly, I would like to thank ICIMOD, donors, and everyone present here to have organized this event to scale up the investment in mountain priorities. Thank you, and Tashtale.
Thank you so much, His Excellency, and also conveying it to us that Bhutan will planning to still to be carbon neutral and carbon negative as well. Now I would like to invite His Excellency Ramasahai Prasad Yadav, Minister, who's Ministry of Forest and Environment from Nepal, and would also like to congratulate him for his appointment. So over to you. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, let me thank the government of the United Kingdom for hosting COP26. I am also thankful to the ICIMOD for organizing the event. Let me also express my sincere appreciation to the honorable ministers and dignitaries from the HKH region who are here with me expressing solidarity for mountains and mountain communities. We need more cooperation and collaboration to save our Himalayas. Excellencies, the Himalayas is the origin of our culture, tradition, values, religion, and identity. The region sustains the continent's major food bowls, which feed more than a third of humanity. However, the magnitude and severity of the climate crisis facing the region is serious. The loss of already evident people in our region are facing food scarcity, water stress, the frequency of the extreme events, and biodiversity loss. Our mountain communities and government have identified ambitious action and address climate change. The mountain people and government are already raising their ambition and fulfilling their commitments. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, behalf of the government of Nepal, I want to make a special and important announcement that shows how committed Nepal is to climate ambition and action. The government of Nepal has endorsed a long-term strategy, LTS, on net zero GHG emission in October 2021, with a condition on the finance being available for implementation of the additional measures identified in Nepal's long-term strategy to net zero GHG emissions. I would now like to announce that Nepal will remain cumulatively net zero from 2022 to 2045 and carbon negative thereafter. Halt deforestation, halt, halt deforestation and increase forest cover to 45% by 2030 and ensure all vulnerable people are protected from climate change by 2030. In doing so, we will join a small number of countries that are committed to net zero now. We do so because we know the net zero is the only way to protect the people of Nepal and other vulnerable countries from the growing impacts of climate change. I call on all countries to follow suit and dig as deep as they can, both their ambition and in their provision of climate finance. Thank you, and I wish you the very best for the successful outcome of this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, His Excellency, and also mentioning about Nepal moving towards the net zero targets. Now I would like to invite His Excellency Malik Amin Aslamji from Pakistan. He's the Minister for Climate Change. Sir, over to you, please. Thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. It's a pleasure to be here at this forum for ICIMOD on the HKH2 pledge that we made, all of the countries that live under this third pole of the world. I remember last time in Madrid, there was a report that had come out, which was very frightening, I would say, because it had warned that this area of the world is going to warm much faster and much more than the rest of the world. So if the rest of the world is going beyond the 1.5 degree threshold, this area would be going there faster and with a heightened temperature. And the second frightening call was that because this area is also most vulnerable to that heating, because the glaciers of the world reside in this area, and there's a huge mass of population, over 1.3 billion, which resides downstream of those glaciers. So all in all, it's a total, I would say, recipe for a disaster in the making. So we had collected at Madrid to unite on this particular aspect, that for this we need to get together and raise it with one voice at the COP meeting and at the COP negotiations, that this is the most vulnerable part of the world, and it is subjected now to the worst sort of heating in the years to come. So the adaptation, the loss and damage, all of that has to be focused on this region. It is absolutely imperative that we focus the funds for loss and damage and adaptation in this region. Right now, we are in the middle of the negotiations, which are really hung upon this question of climate finance. We have been hearing for the last decade, and I call it the decade of disappointment, because it has not come through with the promised pledge. We have seen in these corridors that we, especially the countries of this region, which are subjected to this climate catastrophe, we have been overpromised and under-delivered on climate finance. And I think this is the time to get together and raise that voice, that at least the $100 billion, which is now looking even small, even if that comes through, it is looking small because of the adaptation challenge. 70% of the adaptation in a country like Pakistan is loss and damage. It is that part of adaptation that even if we want to do something to adapt to it, we can't. We have to face that huge deluge of water coming from the melting glaciers. We have to face the cyclones coming from the south, and we have to face the horrendous heat waves which are occurring in our country. We cannot run away from that. We cannot run away from climate change. And I think the least the countries which are responsible for this whole problem can do is, have what they promised on the table. I think it's important. And it's also important that whatever climate finance comes in, at least 60% has to be towards adaptation and loss and damage. Because with adaptation and loss and damage, especially in this very vulnerable region, that we are dealing with lives and livelihoods today. It is not waiting till 2023 or 2030 or 2070. It has to be dealt out today by our economies. They are a constant drain on our economy. In Pakistan, we have the project on Glacier Lake outburst floods. And we have seen that in 2015, there were about 30 lakes, vulnerable lakes, which were prone to bursting. And within a period of 4 years, they have gone up by 5 times. Today, we have 150 vulnerable lakes that we have to monitor. And even if one of these bursts, it can create catastrophe, not just in that area. It would be a huge mass of water that will flow through the system, right down to the Arabian Sea, and cause damage throughout to our infrastructure. So I think Pakistan stands strongly behind this pledge, and we are committed to this, that we need to direct adaptation and loss and damage finance. We need to finalize the loss and damage instrument so that it starts functioning. We've been hearing it for the last 10 years now. So this is now time, because the loss and damage is occurring, but the instrument is not there, unfortunately. So I think these are important issues, and I think we need to collectively raise a voice so that this is the time that the world should hear from these countries. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, and especially also emphasizing on loss and damages in our region. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Rameshwar Prasad Gupta. He is the Secretary from Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, India. Thank you.
Honorable ministers from different countries, officials and representative of the government, organizations and agencies, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, let me express my gratitude to ICIMOD for inviting me to this very special event of Hindu Kush Himalayan regions. The Hindu Kush Himalayan region is spread across Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Nepal, China, Bhutan, Myanmar, and Bangladesh, and is particularly vulnerable, as has been said earlier, to the impact of climate change. In fact, this is one of the regions rightly called barometer for climate change. The climate change impact can be very easily and very discerningly felt in this region. Hills and mountains have very special significance in the Indian subcontinent, and some of the prominent pilgrimage centers are located in these hills and mountains. Therefore, it is necessary that we join hands to protect our hills and mountains in order to protect our environment, biodiversity, flora and fauna, and the planet Earth at large. These mountains encompass a wide variety of ecosystems, this diversity of species, and distinctive human communities. The mountain cover about 12% of the world's land surface, which directly support 22% of the world population within and outside this region. Mountains harbor nearly a quarter of the world forest. The services rendered by these forests provide wide range of ecosystem goods and services directly to approximately 915 million people. They also provide ecosystem services to estimated 40% of the global population, depending directly on these resources for water, hydroelectricity, timber, biodiversity, and niche products. Among the world mountains, Asia has the largest, highest, and most populated mountain system, the Himalaya. The Himalaya is one of the biodiversity hotspot of the world and provider of ecosystem services to millions of the people. Climate change impacts are already being experienced on different sectors like forestry, water resources, agriculture, wildlife in Indian Himalayas. Climate change is also causing extreme events in Himalayan region, which is again a serious cause of concern for the whole region. Recently, Indian Himalaya has faced some of the disasters due to the extreme events like cloudburst, lake bursts, glacial lake burst, and also cyclones. Climate change also poses serious threat to the ability of Himalayan mountains to provide ecosystem goods and services in the region and the downstream. There is an urgent need for upscaling adaptation and mitigation measures to combat climate change in the Himalayan mountains. Recognizing these mountains as early warning indicators of climate change, sustainable mountain development should be a priority. In India, we have already initiated the process of developing Himalayan knowledge network to bridge science and policy gaps. Various national missions like National Mission on Himalayan Studies, National Mission for Sustaining Himalayan Ecosystem are already working on knowledge generation for appropriate policy making for the Himalayas. On the climate front, India is also running one of the world's largest renewable energy expansion program and had set a target of 175 gigawatt of renewable energy by the year 2022. We are almost on the verge of achieving that, and at recent COP26, our Honorable Prime Minister upscaled this target to 400 to 500 gigawatts of non-fossil electrical installed capacity. Transport sector includes various actions like National Electric Mobility Mission, Green National Highway Corridor Project, National Hydrogen Mission, Fuel Efficiency Standard, ethanol blending, and methanol vehicles. They are all part of our transport mission. India's national environment policy outlines the measures for conservation of mountains. Many of the steps so suggested are based on the principle of community involvement, creation of livelihood opportunities, particularly green jobs, reducing environmental risk, and improving resilience of the system. Investment framework for mountains should essentially focus on sustainable use of Himalayan bioresources, energy conservation within the existing infrastructure, and integration of resource efficiency in new commercial constructions. Opportunities for cultivation of crops at higher altitudes, building tourist destinations in the mountains which are environmentally friendly and gel with the natural ecosystem, adoption of good farm practices for fostering climate adaptations. We realize that there is a stronger need to have a better understanding of common challenge and opportunities in the region. HKS assessment report is a good beginning, and the HKH call to action facilitated by ICIMOD is a good beginning to bring scientific evidence to have bearing in the policies and practice in these countries. Many of the issues like atmospheric pollution, biodiversity conservation, and zoonotic diseases, water including disaster, conservation of biocultural heritage, trade and tourism cut across boundaries. There are opportunities for win-win solutions. We support ICMOD's campaign to amplify a collective mountain voice and scale up investment in mountains, which shall enable these countries to address transboundary climate risks and and transition into green and resilient mountain societies. We also echo the three messages. The first, to recognize and protect the Hindu Kush Himalaya as the pulse of the planet. The second, to scale up investment in mountain specific climate priorities through the Mountain of Opportunity Investment Framework. And third, to harness the power of 8 HKH countries to leverage regional and international cooperation to deliver climate action. I thank ICMOD for organizing this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. And also, endorsing the three key messages from ICIMOD. Now I would like to invite Mr. Sun Yan, who is Deputy Director General of Climate Change Department, Ministry of Ecology and Environment, PRC, China. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, and honorable ministers. On the request of the China's Academy of Science, and on behalf also the Chinese delegation to COP26, I'm very honored to be invited to this meeting. I have three points very briefly. First, this mountain region is very important in terms of science. We call it the pulse of the planet. That means it is very important for the scientific observation. So we hope that the countries of this region and scientists focus on this subject can deliver good research results, and can be used by the IPCC. That's also would be very good contribution to the global efforts to tackle climate change. In order for this scientific research, we also need the observation. That is also important. The second point is that this region is a very important region and the subject for the adaptation to climate change. Of course, it's a very complicated and sophisticated ecological system with nature, with livelihood and infrastructure development and everything. Honestly, it's very difficult to develop a adaptation plan, especially for this region, because the speed of climate change and the magnitude of the climate change in this area is very rapid and faster than other regions. We have no examples ahead of us, and especially some of the phenomena can be, they can change over time, because in the first several decades there will be more water from the melting, and then afterwards we will have the droughts. So how can we make a plan to adapt to the situation that is also changing very fast? It will be very, very difficult. But that's also very, very meaningful, that if we can learn and accumulate some experiences, we can also help other regions. And third point is that the difficulties, the challenges to this area can only be solved through the global cooperation. We cannot help ourselves without helping each other. We need a solidarity, a global, solidarity that has been. We have been, working on that for the last 3 decades and 5 decades. So China has been, working very hard to make the climate change as a national priority. Since the Copenhagen 12 years ago, China has published and raised our national climate action targets for 3 times. And now we are in order to implement our targets to 2030 and 2060. The government has and will prepare a series of documents. The one dimension is the sector of action. The other dimension is the means of implementation for different policy tools. So we are very serious, and also we are going to make more efforts to the Green Belt and Road initiative to help and mutually, learning from and among all of the countries. I thank you. I will stop here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sun Zhen, and also to mention about the importance of global cooperation in this. Now I would like to invite Mr. Jonathan Pershing, Deputy Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, United States of America, for his remarks. Over to you.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. We're a little outside of the region, but this is a region that clearly is absolutely central to the success of the global effort to both manage the climate change risk, but also to manage the risks to many who rely on mountain communities for their very survival. The United States is blessed with its own mountains. They're not really of the grandeur of the HKH region, but we do have some learning that we've gotten from that set of our own mountains, which we are certainly happy to engage with and explore. But this is a really unusual part of the world. This is a part of the world which I think is unlike any other. 240 million people in its own right, and billions beyond its borders that rely on this third pole for survival. And it is clearly under threat. We have heard from the honorable ministers gathered here, the secretary in India, the ministers here, about the damages in individual countries, about the dynamics in each of these places that are threatening lives and livelihoods. So what can the world do? We have ICIMOD, which I think serves a critical purpose. It brings cross-boundary programs to a central locus for discussion. It provides a venue to exchange information and knowledge about the opportunities both to increase resilience and adaptation, but at the same time to consider ways that we can reduce emissions within the countries themselves. That is going to be essential. It's been a great privilege for the United States to be part of this endeavor for a long time. We look forward to continuing to expand our work with the ICIMOD as a group and with all of the member countries in the HKH region going forward. But we also believe we can do more in the context of direct bilateral engagement. And we are very proud of some of the things we've done with some of the individual countries in the region. For example, USAID and NASA support ICIMOD's implementation of the Severe Hindu Kush Himalayas, or Severe HKH initiative. It uses satellite data and geospatial technology to address challenges related to climate change, to food security, to water resources and air quality. In Nepal, our Urgent Nepal program supports energy efficiency, adoption of electric vehicles, improved planning for accelerated deployment of renewables, and the response has been a whole-of-government initiative. We answered requests of the Nepalese government with a grant of $500 million from our Millennium Challenge Corporation, a program that's specifically shaped by colleagues in Nepal and doesn't represent only an outside view, but a collaborative view. We've had substantial opportunities in India. I traveled fairly recently with Secretary Kerry, and we met in Delhi and launched a new climate action and finance mobilization dialogue with our Indian colleagues. And Mr. Secretary, it's a pleasure to see you here and your colleagues in the context of the conversation. It's an ambitious partnership to match India's ambitious commitment. You announced also the 500 gigawatts of power by 2030. We look forward to partnering with you on that engagement. But there's also work on energy demonstration projects, accelerating the transition beyond only energy into industry, into transportation, into buildings, and more. We've partnered with Bangladesh, explicitly looking at managing regional power trade among several of the HKH countries. We sponsored the first of its kind assessment on opportunities for grid-scale energy storage and deployment, crossing India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, again, a regional opportunity that this community can actively engage in. In Pakistan, the United States supported the creation of more than 4,000 megawatts of clean generation, transmission, and distribution capacity, critical for the development of the country and, frankly, managing some of the risks that we see across the board. This is all part and parcel of a larger agenda around mountains of opportunity, which ICIMOD has really moved forward. The key investment categories for sustained resilience in the region, including community entrepreneurship, resilient labor markets, and responsive social protection systems. We've seen a huge number of announcements at this meeting. This COP is unique in the flavor, the extent, the number of countries, and the magnitude of the endeavors that people have moved. The commitment to get as close as we can to net zero will be essential for this region in particular. The risks that we have heard that are around the walls in this pavilion, that are in all of our minds as we think about the circumstances facing these countries, cannot be minimized. We, as a collective community, representing some of the most significant nations in the world with enormous influence on this process, must step up. And I think this reflection with this gathering is a mark of that ambition and the mark of that potential. And it's a great pleasure for us in the US to be a partner with all of you as we move that forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for again supporting the Mountains of Opportunity from ICIMOD. Now I would like to invite Kenu Flati, COP26 Regional Ambassador for Asia Pacific and South Asia, for the remarks. Over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, honorable ministers, Director General, regional member country representatives, and UNFCCC country points. I'd like to start by thanking ICIMOD for the invitation to speak to you all today on behalf of the COP26 presidency. We are acutely aware of the vulnerabilities which are facing the Himalayan Hindu Kush and the need for urgent action to address them. The HKH assessment report highlights the role that this region of 4 million square kilometers spread across your 8 countries has to play in the zero carbon and climate resilient future that we all want to see. And in that regard, I'd also like to start by very much welcoming the announcement by our partners in Nepal today around moving towards carbon neutrality from the period 2022 to 2045 and then becoming carbon negative after that. I think this is a great inspiration for all of us and another sign of the breakthroughs which we mentioned coming out of the COP26 conference. Now, with nearly 20% of its landmass under snow cover, this region has the largest reserves of ice outside the polar regions. It is home to 4 global biodiversity hotspots, and it's the source of 10 major Asian river systems. So what happens in this region affects the livelihoods of 240 million people living in the mountains and 1.65 billion people living downstream. Around 3 billion people, or almost half of humanity, depend on the flood that is produced in the HKH region river basins. Alas, climate change is already having a major impact on the region, as I've seen myself as I travel around the relevant countries. Temperatures are rising more rapidly than at lower altitudes, and that is leading to a meltdown of the so-called third pole and major losses of biodiversity. And as a result, the peoples of the HKH region are also facing more frequent climate disasters, which are leading to loss of lives and loss of livelihoods. Glacial retreat has already created over 100 glacial lakes in the HKH, lakes that are now putting communities downstream across the region at risk from glacial lake outburst floods. These floods used to be very rare, but recent estimates show that they will now regularly occur at least once each year. As the COP26 regional ambassador for the Asia Pacific and South Asia region, I am therefore particularly focused on supporting the introduction of Mountains of Opportunities as an investment framework for the HKH region. The World Bank estimates that climate change can push over 40 million people back into poverty in South Asia unless its impacts are reduced and better coping mechanisms are put in place. And that's why I'm glad to see that the HKH call for action prioritizes actions on developing an investment framework, a framework that is based on resilient, nature-based solutions, businesses, but most of all, communities through investments in disaster warning systems and social protection for the vulnerable. I'm also glad that you've identified mountains of opportunity that the Hindu Kush Himalayas offer on climate change, with large, massive forestry and hydropower resources, the HKH can be a significant source of emissions reductions across the region. The 190 gigawatts of hydropower in the HKH could power the whole of the UK more than twice over if it was sustainably developed. In addition, better management of water resources can ensure sustainable supplies to the increasingly water-stressed plains across the region. Similarly, there are many opportunities to develop and to implement sustainable and green technologies in these mountains. But what will it take to turn these opportunities into reality? I'd like to cite two particular aspects that I think are critical and I'm sure will be part of today's discussions. First of all, regional cooperation. 5 major river systems that arise in the HKH are all shared by more than one member country. They must be preserved, they must be protected, and they must be managed as shared resources by both upstream and downstream users. Excuse me. That will become increasingly important to reduce the floodwater levels during the rains and to maintain river flows in the dry season as climate change increases the frequency and the severity of these extreme events. Regional climate risks require regional cooperation and regional solutions. Secondly, I'd like to cite the importance of securing the investments to make the HKH green, resilient, and prosperous. The HKH have a particular set of barriers that must be overcome to generate resources and create those resilient economies and viable enterprises that we all want to see. These particular investment problems do require particular solutions that can invest patient capital in low carbon development across the region. And that will help create viable markets for Himalayan products and services to price and underwrite the risks of investing in the Himalaya and make resilient investments to reduce those to a minimum. And that's why, alongside the call for action on resilience and low carbon development, I'm very pleased to see the inclusion of finance for the HKH as part of this initiative. I very much welcome and recognise the need to support increased flows from both public and private sources to these vulnerable areas. And that's why the UK is committed to providing its share, with our Prime Minister doubling our international climate finance spend to 11.6 billion over the current 5-year period. But we do know that we need to multiply this figure by working with partner governments and the private sector in the region, not just in investments of green and resilient infrastructure and disaster risk reduction, but also in risk transfer solutions like insurance to cover uninsured losses and focus markets on developing solutions that will make a difference to new climate challenges. So I very much support today's focus on the role of resilient businesses that adopt new approaches to agriculture, tourism, energy, and financial services to make mountain firms resilient, future-proof, and profitable. Characteristics that will also make them investable and which will unlock the growing markets for green investment that can provide the kickstart for green recovery and job creation across the region. I'm also glad to say that the UK has just announced £274 million for the Climate Action for a Resilient Asia, or CARA, programme at Adaptation, Loss and Damage Day yesterday. The CARA programme takes a regional approach to addressing shared environmental challenges and will directly support ICIMOD in continuing its work to protect the unique ecology of the HKH region and take forward the Mountains of Opportunity investment framework. In summary, I look forward very much to seeing the consensus on these issues coming out of today's high-level conference on the need for action to develop an investment framework in the HKH. And I'd like to thank you again and say that we're looking forward very much to working with you in the months and years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Can. And just again, for the paucity of the time, we will skip the question answers round and would like to invite Mr. Keval Prasad Bhandari, Member Secretary, National Planning Commission, also on the ICIMOD board, for his closing remarks. Thank you.
Good morning. Namaste. Excellency Minister and Representative, Excellency Ambassador in the cloud, other dignitaries in the floor, DGPEMA and ICIMOD team. It is always a good chance to speak something at the end of the event, because there is most of the thing is already said and nothing remain. Still, if anyone want to say, there is a lot of time to say myself. It is always, I bring you greetings from Dr. Bishwanath Paudel, Vice Chair of the National Planning Commission Nepal and Chair of ICIMOD Board of Governance, to congratulate this event. First of all, I would like to thank ICIMOD for organizing the high-level event today, Mountains for Opportunity, a framework to scale up investment in mountain-specific climate priorities in the Hindu Kush Himalaya region, on the sideline of COP26 with the ministers of the region and many dignitaries in the virtual world. I'm not going to summarize the knowledge and insight expressed here as a tradition. These ideas are our treasure and which guide us for coming days to face crisis in the region. We are one of the oldest civilizations in the Indian subcontinent. Our civilization has seen different natural catastrophe, and based on that, we changed our way of living and adapting our daily lives. Our indigenous way of life was very close to nature. With the modern aspirations to development, we could not maintain our traditional sustainable way of life. While the accelerating climate crisis affects many parts of the world, the Hindu Kush Himalaya region impacts are felt particularly acute in the HKS region. As the source region of the 10 major rivers basin, as my predecessor says, that are the home of 1.9 billion people, the HKS is the pulse of planet whose health is indicative of the health of the rest of the world. Over the past few days, much attention has been drawn to the problems, that threats, and the concern related to the climate crisis and to the actions that are needed to reduce those. The solutions are also an opportunity for investing is in benefiting from the solutions to the crisis. Indeed, as the title of the event suggests, the Hindu Kush Himalaya region provides mountains of opportunity to build climate resilient and carbon neutral societies in the mountains and beyond. The region's natural assets can deliver nature based solutions and opportunities for resilient enterprises and infrastructure to implement adaptation and mitigation targets. Its social and institutional assets can help create a green and resilient labor force in and beyond the region and provide shock responsive social protection, aligning COVID 19 economic recovery measures with these maintain niche investment opportunities can help leverage and scale up much needed international, regional, and national investment in green, resilient, and inclusive development, which Nepal already accepts with development communities. Let me mention several such opportunities in adaptation. The NAPS highlights investment needs and opportunities in agriculture, food security, disaster risk reduction and management, forest and biodiversity and watershed conservation, rural and urban settlement, water resources and energy, tourism, natural and cultural heritage, health, drinking water and sanitation, industry, transport and infrastructure, JC, livelihood and good governance. To mitigation, in mitigation, meeting countries' and NDC target requires a lot of new investment. In addition, Nepal's long-term strategy, invasion, bold policy making, social transformation, and technological advancement that will lead to a carbon neutral, inclusive, and carbon resilient future. The government of Nepal has recognized the triple threats of COVID 19, climate change, and rising inequality, and in the spirit of mutual collaboration to achieve the sustainable development goals. today calls on all stakeholders to support the joint development and delivery of strategic action plan to support Nepal's green, resilient, and inclusive development. This is expected to be based on our joint determination that Nepal's recovery from COVID-19 cannot be at the cost of long-term increases in climate vulnerability, emissions, or unsustainable development of Nepal's natural and human capital. The government of Nepal recognized that a durable recovery from a pandemic requires mobilization and investment to protect lives and secure jobs and livelihoods while building resilience, strengthening inclusion, enhancing sustainability, and promoting efficiency of the resources used. It is also important to step out beyond actions and priorities in individual countries. We recognize the need to have a better understanding of common challenges and opportunities in the region. The HKH statement report and the HKH collection facilitated by ICIMOD are very good beginning to bring scientific evidence to have bearing on the policies and practice of HKH countries. We support ICIMOD's campaign to amplify a collective mountain voice and scale up investment in mountain-specific climate priorities, which shall enable HKH countries to address transboundary climate risk and the transition into green, resilient, and inclusive mountain societies. I thank ICIMOD to have organized this event to scale up the investment in mountain priorities. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And now I would like to invite Dr. Pema for the vote of thanks. And after that, we'll have a group photograph also. And then, please. Thank you.
Okay, honorable ministers, excellencies, also all the distinguished guests joining us here in person as well as virtually from Kathmandu and from across the globe. Thank you very much. I think you have heard the voices of the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. You have heard the people's voices. You have heard our leaders' voices. I think the message is clear that the Hindu Kush Himalaya is the pulse of the planet, a barometer of climate change, a global climate change, that the Hindu Kush Himalaya is facing a crisis, that the impacts of climate change is much more severe in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region than elsewhere, and that it requires urgent actions now. I think we have heard this over and over and over again from our leaders, from our development partners. I think this is history in the making. I'm very, very thankful to all of you for the excellent statements, ambitious pledges that have been made here today from our regional member countries. We have talked about the investment framework. To take urgent actions, we need investments, financial investments, not only from our own regional member countries, but from outside as well. And we have heard our partners come forward with strong statements of support. Investment is absolutely essential if you are to make a difference. But most important of all is regional cooperation. And I'm very grateful that our members, the heads of our delegates here, representatives, have pledged to cooperate and take this HKH goal to action forward. So let me thank you all for sparing time to grace this occasion despite your very, very busy schedule. Thank you very much, and I wish you all a very happy day. Photograph. May I invite everyone for a group photo?